Hey team, welcome to episode 126 of Transition Talk, where we talk about dental transitions and how to navigate the sometimes messy path to practice ownership. So it may feel as if more and more doctors are gravitating towards the DSO route. And while DSOs can be a fit for many doctors, they're not for everyone. If you're on the fence about DSOs versus private practice, or you know you want to own a practice, how do you navigate the hype? Make an informed decision that's right for you. It can be complex. There's no 100% right way. We won't be able to give you an answer on this podcast, but what we will give you is some key insights about what to think about, what not to think about, and how to focus on your why, which is what we always do.
And we went DSO today, huh? This is, wow. You talk about conversations and lectures and stuff. This is bad. This is bad. Oh, this is good. This is good. So there's a lot of heated conversations about this whole journey.
It's like we're talking politics.
We are. That's just what I was thinking. We're kind of talking politics. Before we talk politics, how are you doing?
I'm great.
Any major changes in your life? Anything you want to share?
All the changes. I've said more times than I can count in the first 3 months of this year that I did not see that on my 2025 bingo card. And one of those things was we bought and sold a house within 13 days of each other, from going to not moving to moving, selling, and closing.
So tell us about this new city that you're moving to, this new area, and the change of schools. What's happening there?
So I can see the back fence of the house we're moving to from my current house.
Okay. Did you stalk them and say, I want to buy your house or something?
No. So I'm in Dallas. We live in the Kessler Park area. If you're familiar with that area, it's just one of those neighborhoods with tons of old houses. And so if you live in that area, you drive around the neighborhood and you like, oh, I've always loved that house, or I've always loved that house, or I wonder what that house looks like inside. And so in our current house, we needed one more bedroom and one space
Another
for my
child coming? What do you need?
But I need space for my current children to not be in my space. You know?
I gotcha. Yeah.
Like there have been so many times.
This is a sanity room, basically.
Yeah. Chris and I have been literally sitting in our bedroom watching TV because our kids are in the living room. And I'm like, what is happening? Is this not our home?
You're right.
So we just needed a little bit bigger space. This house came on the market. Our realtor knows. We went and looked. We've looked at tons of houses and they haven't been a good fit. This one we walked in and said, ooh, we like this one. And
nice.
It all came together, which is fantastic, but it's a lot of moving.
I tell you what, Christy, you bring some of these major stresses, see, every
all
year
together.
You got them like all coming at once, right?
I know. It's this like Radcliffe problem of like, let's do everything all at once, Let's do it in the busiest time of the year. So it's all great, but it's a busy spring.
I'm happy for you.
For sure. What about you? What's going on?
Oh, I don't know. This has just been a busy work time for me. So just got through with a lot of the speaking engagements. So I've got a little Mexico trip on the horizon, and I'm kind of got the countdown. Got the countdown of, how much longer is it going to be? Just in the grind right now,
I know. I actually took a page from your book, and we actually have a Cabo trip planned, and I'm excited.
My role is in Cabo, you book your next Cabo trip, because if you don't, it's just not something to look forward to. So no, all is good. The Roxanne is doing great. 4 kiddos. I was just at Hinman, and young person's like, I've listened to every single one of your episodes. I feel like I know you. You
probably do.
Yeah, and they were still asking me about Cole and Bella, about, this or that, and what's the update. I'm like, yeah, he's in his master's program.
You're on episode 85,
yeah.
So just catch up.
Everybody's doing good. So.
Oh, good. Well, I think this is a great topic. I will caveat here that, if you are an established doc owner who are listening to this practice and is kind of looking and listening from what method of transition is best for me, this is probably not the episode for you. We have other episodes, happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you about private versus DSO and what might fit for your type of practice. But this episode is really geared more towards the buyer, right? The young doctor who's either in school or working and is trying to understand this DSO hype. I mean, I think like you said, I have a foot in both worlds. And I think in one side you hear that private practice is dead, and the other side you hear that DSOs are going to die and going to fail. And I don't think either is true. I think that they both coexist right now, and I think they will continue to coexist. And so our goal in this episode is just to help educate and help direct people and like how to think about this DSO world, which is not going away.
One thing I want to comment about the sellers, and I think this is to our buyers as well, is just because this DSO private equity is a part of our dental landscape, not all practices are basically qualified to sell to them. And that is one of the biggest, misunderstandings in all of dentistry, that you have this $1 million GP practice with a 65% overhead, and they're in rule, whatever. And they just think that one of their options and solutions is going to sell to this private equity group. And the reality is those practices have to qualify. And that's an example that's not going to qualify. So if you don't know what your overhead, what your EBITDA is, and what if you would qualify or not, you really have to explore that to know what your private practice value is and what your private equity value is, to see if that even fits into your financial plan, as well as just where you're trying to go and kind of leave your practice from a legacy standpoint too. So it is something that, I think it's important for you to be educated on what you own.
Yeah, and we will at the tail end of this episode also kind of talk to you if you are a practice that's looking to grow and bring on an associate. I think it's important for you to understand kind of what they're hearing and kind of what's being offered to them. And so there are some nuggets here if you are an established doc and want to listen.
Yeah, sorry to derail you, but
No.
there's so many questions I always get just, from people, and they always think this is an option. I'm like, yeah, not really.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the question that we get most often, or maybe they may not ask it directly, but I think it's insinuated, is I want to own a private practice. I want to be an owner or a partner in a private practice one day. How do I navigate kind of this looming DSO kind of messaging? I mean, they're all over the dental schools and residency programs. Like, how do I get past that, right? Like, how do I get the confidence, almost is kind of how I read it, to like really go for that when all I hear about is this.
It's interesting too, just like from the student standpoint, sometimes they will almost come to me with, they're like ashamed. Like, hey, I went down the road. I'm actually going to go work for, a DSO. And it's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it is quite okay. Remember, the pathway is, if whatever this pathway is, let's get some experience. And I think there's great experience that we can get working with these DSOs. So I really don't have any issue at all with those first few years of what you do, just really working in the private practice. And I think there's some advantages that some of the DSOs really offer to young people from a clinical standpoint, from just, it could be from the systems, the patient flow. It could be just their marketing. They got line out the door of the patients. I mean, busyness is one of the first things that I just want any, young person that's coming out of a dental school or a residency program that's going into the general practice route. So there's no shame in where you go here.
No, I think that when you graduate, right, most people are not ready to buy a private practice.
No.
Financially, production-wise, life-wise, they're just not there. And so I think that really, if you are someone who's graduating, maybe not in the city or state you want to be in, your spouse is finishing a residency program and they're not going to be ready for a few years, you just aren't sure what kind of dentist/owner you want to be. A DSO owned practice, like a lot of them are run differently, right? Like they're private practices that sold to a DSO group and they still run very similar to maybe how they ran previously, right? I know some people just think of like the Heartlands and the Mints and these corporate type chains, but there are a lot of practices that you can go work at that are kind of operated still like a private practice, but have a DSO ownership. Any experience that you can get in a practice with patients, increasing your skills, increasing your speed is positive. And if you're someone who doesn't really know what you want to do, the best thing you can do is go find a practice where you can be busy, you can make good money, and you can spend that time figuring out what kind of dentist you want to be or where you want to go, or, hold out that time until that spouse or life thing happens where you can kind of make the move to where you ultimately want to land.
I definitely want here is the mentorship as well. What I don't want to see is for you to interview at practice A, DSO, and everything sounds great, and then you're going to go work at practice B that's a newer location. Well, again, we don't have that established patient base. We don't have that established maybe mentorship and systems and team and assistance and hygiene all at this new location. So you're kind of going on this island, on your own. And I really believe in value of this, having just that experienced person to push you in your confidence as well as to bail you out when that confidence is high, but that clinical skill set is not there to maybe complete the task. So you want to see that at either the private practice or the DSO of just that, the patient flow and the patient experience, and what can you learn from that. That's why I love when you're interviewing at these companies or even a private practice is just a very thorough interview and really get a feel for what their day and week and months are going to look like.
Yeah. And I think one thing that DSOs are doing that private practices can't compete with is the financial piece of this, right? Like they are oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes they are able to pay more than what a private practice can pay. They're able to offer bonuses and moving allocations and student loan repayment and things that a private practice practitioner is really going to struggle to do and to match. And so, if you're in your first year and you can take advantage of some of those pieces, first year or 2 or 3, and you can take advantage of some of those things, those can be really beneficial to you in jumpstarting and saving if ultimately you want to own a private practice.
And remember, you're looking at the complete compensation package. And so the package I don't want you to focus on is the 27% of adjusted production, and my private practice over here pays 30%. I mean, 30% of $500,000 because the practice is slower, you're going to make $150,000. 27% of the $1 million in restorative is $270,000. On top of the $270,000, perhaps they do have the 401k plan and profit sharing. Perhaps they have a $25,000 sign-on bonus. Perhaps they're doing $12,000, $15,000 of CE. So you have to look at the entire financial package. Now, remember, we're just looking at those as what it looks like as the employee. Certainly, we have to look into the bigger picture of kind of the why. Why are we going to work for 30 years and who is it going to be with? But for those first few years, I agree with you. That financial package can be quite lucrative, exciting, entertaining that we can't just walk away from.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, I feel like they either have the shame that you talked about initially, or they feel like, oh, well, look at all my friends. They're all going this DSO route and they're getting all these great packages and lots of money and whatever. But like, I kind of want to go back to my hometown and there's 2 or 3 practices that I know would be great fits for ownership, but I'm not going to make as much, right? And I'm going to go to that practice. And for those people, right, like it all comes back to your why and what your goals are. And for those people have to block out the noise of that, right? Of those pieces, because we will still say, if you can go back to your hometown where you ultimately want to be and you have a plan to own that practice and you can associate in it and then you can buy it within 2 or 3 or 4 years or become a partner in it, and that's where you want to be, then it might be worth giving up a little bit financially, because long term, your 30-year, that's the end goal, right? So kind of that end goal, I think, is where we want to try to focus our mind. And if we don't have an end goal and we're just trying to figure things out, then we can kind of take some detours. But I would never want someone to detour their end goal because they are just chasing money.
Yep. Now, remember, too, that if you go to work for a corporate office or private practice and you're just the associate, and yeah, you make this $270,000 because you did $1 million restorative. Remember, you did $300,000 to $400,000 of hygiene, so you technically ran $1 million for a practice, and you technically should have made probably close to $600,000. So remember that you are going to make almost twice as much from an income standpoint by going to the private practice versus being associate, either corporate or to associate in a private practice. Taking that step back to be in that location that you just mentioned, and it's a smaller practice and maybe you only make $150,000, but there's this opportunity to grow. There's opportunity to buy maybe some patient records and charts from this other practice. There's the internal diagnosis that we've done, and it's just where we want to be. Maybe our spouse has income. Maybe our spouse is happy there. Maybe we're going to live in, like the episode I had with Friend, where he lived in his parents' basement. Like whatever that is, because that was what was important to him, is to be a private practice owner straight out of school and then to focus on CE. And obviously that led to a great story. But yeah, we have to really, and you have to really understand kind of your personal mission. I actually, the course that you are kind enough to help teach out at Texas Tech, I just got through reading all the mission statements and kind of the personal statements that your exercise was for at the end of the year, and got to read those. And, you get to see what these young D3s and D4s have, kind of their current vision. Okay. And it's kind of cool to read and to help kind of put something down on paper for people to kind of reflect back and see, did I do that? Yeah. Did I become a private practice owner within 2 years, which some of them, had written down? And so I think it's important, from a goal standpoint, and just to be able to spend time with your spouse. What is it you're looking for? What's that journey? Get that written down. And then how are you going to accomplish that?
Yeah. And I think what I have learned over the last 10 some odd years is that transitions are a very unique thing to the person, right? And ownership is very unique in how you own and if you own. We have talked to lots of people who say, I don't ever have the desire to own. I just want to work and then have life. And they do that for a period of time. And then they decide maybe they do want to own, right? Like their perspective shifts. And that's okay, right? Like our only goal is that you are educated about what you are doing and think about what your ultimate goal is. But goals shift, right? Perspective shifts. Like we're dealing with a lot of people right now who have been in the workforce, private or DSO, for 5, 7, 10 years. And finally they're like, hey,
Aha.
I can do that. I
Right.
think I'm doing everything now that I would do if I owned, and so let me own. And then we're also seeing people who are shifting out of ownership, maybe earlier than historical, because now they want to go do something else, right?
Right.
Like, so it's just a very unique journey, I guess I should say. And I think what is important is understanding that we, as an organization, there's no shame in whatever that decision is if it's done in an educated way and you know what your options are and you're making the choice, right?
Right.
We just don't want you to hear and be influenced because in your residency student program, everything was sponsored by every DSO known to man. And the message you got was that you can't do it. And that's why you think you can't do it, right? Like that's what we're trying to avoid because that is a false narrative, right?
It is. It is. We have so many successful private practices, certainly touch literally thousands and thousands of people a year just from our client base as well as just going out and lecturing throughout the year. And, there is literally no messaging back from the audience and back from people like, hey, we were $1 million practice, but because corporate is here now, we're 800. We used to get 40 new patients a month and now we're down to 15 or 20. We can't keep up because of corporate came in. That doesn't exist. This is not Walmart coming in and taking over the local hardware store. This is not happening. If anything, these practices or private practices are really figuring out. They're really big, major changes in the last 2 years of just really recognizing how to get out of the insurance game and becoming more of a fee-for-service model, just having just really good success there. So I can't say enough what the value is and for a young person to go into private practices with all the choices and benefits. So do I think there's a place in private equity or the DSO space? 100%. Do I think it's for everybody to go private practice? No, I think the DSO space is a great place for people when they just can't make up their mind. If they just like, I don't know what to do. I don't think I'll have it. Well, probably my argument there is you're probably hanging around the wrong people.
Yeah.
Go hang around with 6 or 7, 8, 9, 10 people that are all in private practice that are successful. Hang around the campfire with them. You're the only one that's not. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to walk away from the campfire saying, I think I'm ready to do this. If you hang around with a bunch of people that are unsuccessful and got these practices and Facebook groups that are all saying you can't do this, then guess what? You're probably going to stay at that DSO for a long, long time. So again, as you mentioned, this is a financial planning game. You're going to start off as a $400,000, $500,000 in debt student, $600, $700, $800 million in debt resident. You got a journey of 30 plus years to accumulate assets. Here's one way to do it. Here's another way to do it. That's really up to you to try to figure out how am I going to accumulate my wealth, see kind of both options, look at work-life balance, look at spousal income, and so that you can kind of navigate which one is best suited for you. And then obviously get your team around you to help kind of coach you through before you go down either one of these roads to make sure that people are asking you all the right questions before you kind of check the box of which direction you go.
Yeah, 100%. Everything you just said. I think it's a figuring out what your plan is and figuring out how you're going to get there and making sure you're making those decisions. One of the questions that we get, I think we should talk about, is people who want to do a startup or who want to purchase the practice and they ask us the question, how do I know this is going to be successful, right? Like, what about DSOs? And my first question is, well, are there a lot of DSOs in your geographic area, right? Because if there are, that is a real concern as a private practice owner you need to be aware of, right? Like you are the small fish in a big fish pond and you have to have the hustle, the plan, the motivation to like compete because that is going to be challenging if you are in a DSO heavy area and you are one of the few private practices left. Yep. It could be a positive, and it could also be a struggle from a new patient, marketing, advertising. Still, I think it's good, but like you're going to have to understand what you're up against.
Yep. I got one of my students is going to a surgery program and is going to go back to his area. There are 6 other surgeons in the area. All 6 have sold to private equity. So there are no private practice surgeons in the entire community. And so he's already being offered to come work. And I'm like, no. You'll be the first private practice, surgeon back in the area. You'll market to your referral base and you're going to grow your surgery practice and get it up to $3 million. And then at that point, you bring an associate. At that point, maybe you sell it to private equity. That will be the path that I believe you're going to take. And I believe it's because you're from the area. I believe it's because you've always wanted to be a surgeon. I think you've got a good kind of sense about you. He's going to be really good in marketing. This is a better path for you. Just like, are you sure? I'm like, I'm 100% sure. Now, take that same case and it's a GP and they're a D4, 26 years old, and they got 1 year experience and $500,000 in debt and going back to the community of 15 GPs and 10 of them are all corporate and you're going to do a startup practice, I mean, that's a tough road because now you're marketing against major companies that have great marketing dollars all going after the same patients. It's a much harder story to tell that, hey, you're a private practice because people don't care. You know, in a small space of surgery referral base, it's a much different story that you're able to kind of preach. So in that example, if I was coaching a 1 year, 2 year experienced person back going into that same situation where you've got a bunch of DSOs that are there, I'm much more likely and prone to buy an established practice because once you buy the established practice, what we've been able to see is those patients will absolutely stay with you, even though it's a competitive area from a marketing standpoint for grabbing new patients. If we can just buy those existing patients and focus more on internal growth and focus more on internal referrals, internal growth is more of like diagnosing and treatment planning and do better of the 2,000 active patients we've got, and then get those same 2,000 to refer you more, then play the marketing game as well. I think we really minimize our risks there in buying a practice in that area that you just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that I think in this episode without talking about is the packages that DSOs put together for associates and for are pretty.
Yes.
They're not only from like what they're offering, but they're very thoughtful. They're presented well. They're strategic. They're looking years before someone's ready, right? Like there's that marketing to kind of find that person. If you are a private practice owner who is trying to attract or retain associates, you have to play that game, right? And even if you can't compete financially, you can still play that game. So tell me your thoughts on this topic.
Well, the problem with the private practice guy and gals, they just don't have the experience. So maybe they're 50 years old and maybe they had one failed associate and they're done. And now all of a sudden they're getting tired. They want to bring the second one in. They just haven't thought about it. They don't have the full, here's the associate path. It's 2 years. Here's your sign-on bonus. Here's what we're going to do for CE. Here's when the practice is going to be evaluated. Here's when you're going to become a partner. Here's the transition group that we're going to guide us through this. Here's the how we're going to handle the building. Here's the how we're going to handle splitting the money. Here's how you're going to buy me out. There's just no plan.
Yeah.
It's just kind of the, hey, come on and we'll be an associate. And then you're comparing that to their other offers, which is that DSO that's amazing. They've got the HR that's been working. Recruiting's been working back to the school. They've got, hey, year one, $25,000 sign-on bonus. Let's put this towards your dental school loans. Year two, you get this. CE, we do internally. You can place implants, anything they're doing there to like really attract on what a student typically wants to do. Anything implants, training implants, I want to do that. They've had some aligner case training in school, but the implant side that really not dealing with it very much. So let's market that to the students and let's give them that. Let's give them these benefits. Let's market the fact they get to leave at this time. Let's market of all this great. It's colorful. It's just hard to take this colorful, beautiful, all the benefit packages that these companies are offering and compare it to, if you like me, I'll like you and I'll pay you 30%. It's just very, you can see why this 26, 27, 20 would lean towards the other. So it's a sense of uncertainty.
Yeah.
What experience do you have in this? It sounds like you had one failed one. And so that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
So it's normal.
Yeah. And I think that if you want to compete, I think you have to be thoughtful and you have to think well ahead of when you need, right? I mean, I think a lot of private owners work on their own until they can't or don't want to yesterday. And then they go to look for an associate so that they're finding someone they have to find versus finding someone they want to find, right? And so I think being able to say, hey, here's my plan. Here's where I am today. I don't really need one today, but I want to start looking for the right person. Here's what kind of package I want to put together. I want to highlight work-life balance. I want to highlight mentorship. I want to highlight the culture and the business experience that I can give them because I'm going to let them take over X, Y, or Z. You're not going to do this on day one, right? But it's a plan. Here's what I'm going to cover in CE. Here's how I'm going to help you grow. You have to think about all of those pieces. If someone wants to go into private practice, that can still be very attractive, even if you cannot financially meet the percentage or the student loan program or the bonus or whatever financially they're offering. There are still people who will choose a well laid out plan over all these financial incentives because they understand that the planned ownership doesn't exist. That's the one thing they oftentimes cannot offer at the level you can offer in the private world. And so you have to be thoughtful about it before you're ready.
Oh, man, amen. I get so many people on the established doctor side. They call Cane Waters for a problem.
Yeah.
And the problem's always something: taxes, pension investments, overhead. But this transition thing is probably 50% of my calls. Somebody's calling about some pain. And so they're calling and you explain it. And it's like, okay, I want to be a client, but how do I deal with this associate? And the way that I explain it is you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to be transparent enough to where they can see that even if you don't have a plan, you're going to get one. Mm-hmm. And so I would tell that student, I don't have the plan yet, but I'm going to get one. And my commitment to you is to do the following. My commitment is to give a pathway. My commitment is to pay you a fair compensation. My commitment is to put a $15,000, $20,000 CE package that I'm committed to. My commitment is to expand. My commitment is to hire another, assistant, to expand our marketing. And most of all, as you're looking at other alternatives, my commitment to you is to be an owner of this business, which no matter what you do in shop, there's not going to be a financial package and a full opportunity that I'm going to offer you. So you're going to have to know what you have. You're going to obviously need to be ready as a senior doctor, and you have to present that plan. Now, for my associate doctors, same thing. You better understand and ask all those same exact questions to my established doctors. And you need to take the reins and ask the questions and not expect the senior doctor just to kind of lead this way, but ask hard questions. What is my pathway? How are you dealing with this? And you don't have to put like a beautiful corporate package in front of them and say, can you match this? I mean, that's ridiculous, but at least kind of use those as the bullets and the package they're offering you, and just how would you address these? And maybe if I'm joining your practice, how would you address these from a CSAT? How would you address all of these things? And then now you can make that kind of side-by-side comparison.
Yeah.
And you're looking for that owner to be confident and to lead and to say, I haven't thought about that. I like all that, and we need to figure this out together. You're looking for that. You're bringing up all these, and they're getting defensive, and no, and okay, well, that meeting's me not going as smooth as possible and could be a sign. So that's why I love to interview lots of people. 2 or 3 DSOs, if you're going that route, perfect. You go figure out what's best for you. 3 or 4 private practices, whatever's best for you, you'll figure that out for multiple interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think the overriding message that we always tend to come back to is in this DSO space, this hype, the noise, it is important not to stick your head in the sand either direction, right? Let's not just stick it in the DSO side and not really think about that private side. Let's not just ignore it because it's not going anywhere and it's something you have to be very well aware of in this industry. I think for us, I think it is a real alignment of thinking about where you ultimately want to be and what you want to do and figuring out a plan to get there and utilizing the best resources that you can, right? And that might mean that you go do a stint in DSO. It might mean you stay DSO longer than you intended, or it might mean you never go that route, right? And you forego some of the things that maybe could give you a quick bump from a financial standpoint, but may delay where you want to be 30 years from now. And so for us, I think it's just important that owners, students, non-owners, whoever's listening, to really take a second, push away the noise on both sides and really think, what do I want to do and who do I want to be and how can I best get there with what I have in front of me?
Well, and one more thing on this, not all DSOs are equal. There are some that do a fantastic job and there's others that don't. The one thing I can tell you at this point, they're not going away. This is not going to be a situation where, well, they peaked out at 2025 and now look, they're on this major decline and they're all falling apart. They have done a great job. And there's a lot of groups out there now that have really happy doctors, happy owners. And so they're figuring it out. And so, as you said, the head in the sand mentality is not the play here.
No.
You want to be able to look and understand kind of both spaces, where they're at, their strengths, their weaknesses, so you can make your own decisions of, quote unquote, who you partner with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we covered it pretty well. That's all we have for today. Thanks for joining us on episode 126 of Transition Talk. Lots of resources and other episodes. This transition journey is a pretty unique one. And so if you're listening and you are unsure or you are thinking of transitioning or adding an associate in a couple years, next year, tomorrow, and you need some guidance based on your unique situation, please know we're here. Know we have a team ready and willing to help you.
And also, one comment here. Tune in 20 episodes from now to hear Christy's new home purchase as well.
Oh, stop it. This is the forever home.
This is, forever.
Forever. Forever, ever.
Great,
As always.
great job today, girl.
Make sure you listen, share the transition love with those that may not know of us yet, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time.
See ya.